Overconsumption, consumerism, and materialism. All things our society tends to put on a pedestal. Not only does this cause people to overextend themselves and live beyond their means, but it doesn't usually translate into a truly happy life. That's why I'm so excited to welcome Kara Perez back on the show. Kara's first book, Green Money, comes out in a few weeks, and today she's here to chat with me about all things money and sustainable living. If you are looking to live a happier life on less, you don't want to miss this conversation. So, you may remember Kara coming on the show over 2 years ago to talk about financial feminism. And if not, I'll make sure to link to that episode in the show notes. But since then, Kara has continued to create content tailored towards underconsumption, sustainable living, and finding joy in the non material. And as I mentioned, Kara's first book, Green Money, comes out later this month and it's available for pre order now. We will talk about that more in this episode. But Kara, welcome. Hello. It's so good to have you back on the show. Congratulations on the book. I know we will dive into that shortly, but for now, can you share what you've been up to since our last conversation in May of 2022, which is so crazy?
That's exactly the word for it. Crazy. I'm like, that was 3 weeks ago. What are you talking about?
Right?
It's- Well, firstly, thank you for having me back. It's always so wonderful to chat with you, and your audience is incredible. What has been going on the last 2 years? So I took a little time off in 2022 to do some traveling with my partner, which was really wonderful. We did Mexico, Costa Rica, and Colombia.
Wow.
And then I kind of pivoted my business because I really am a long-term, passionate about sustainability. And more so, I am finding myself in my everyday life in the outdoors, doing outdoorsy things. And I really think there is a strong connection between money and sustainability, hence me writing a whole book about it. So I have been pivoting the business in the last couple of years to really focus on that. And it's been going well. It's always challenging, as you know, this entrepreneur life, but that's
Girl.
kind of the high highs, the low lows. That's the journey, baby.
Absolutely, but it affords you the ability to take time off and travel South America. How amazing that probably was. Any like fun experiences or memories from that trip?
Oh my gosh, yes. If you ever go to Mexico City, we did Ballet Folklorico, which is this like 2 hour dance history of Mexico, and it was awesome. It's in Mexico City at the National Art Museum. And it was incredible. So that was
Wow.
definitely a like you have to do it. Luchadores, obviously to the wrestling. That was amazing. We had such a good time there. And then we just really loved Colombia as a country. So just like shout out Colombia. Really, we went to Bogota, Cartagena, and Medellin, and all
Wow.
three were fire. So, Columbia, you're doing a great job. Keep doing what you're doing.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like such an amazing trip. And you guys, you drove through all of the countries, right? Or did you fly? Oh, you
No,
flew. Okay.
yeah. I mean, what a dream that would be, but also what a nightmare that would be.
Yeah, I hear you.
So, no, we flew.
Oh, fun. Well, yes, that is what entrepreneurship can afford you, which is wonderful. I think too, obviously we follow each other on social media and I've seen you moving around quite a bit. You've definitely moved a few times since you were last in Austin, where we last saw each other. How did all of that go financially in terms of moves and like, are you stationary? Do you have any tips for people who do need to uproot their lives and do it in a budget friendly way?
Yes, I do, because at this point, I feel like I'm a professional mover. So,
Yes.
I lived in Austin for 11 years and I moved 10 times. And just within the city of Austin, trying to get cheaper rent. So, and then, right, we moved from Austin to Charlotte, North Carolina, and then from North Carolina to Massachusetts. So, interstate or within the same city, I got you. My
Mhm.
biggest tip would be have less stuff the less that you have, the less you need to move. And a lot of times we just accumulate stuff. People forget things at our house, or we go out to eat a bunch, and all of a sudden it's like, why do I have 90 million plastic to go containers? I don't know. Things just accumulate. So, a habit that I got into a few years ago is once a quarter, I put on my calendar. I call it my quarterly purge day, and I'll just go around my house and grab things that I haven't used in the last 3 months, and I will donate them, I will gift them away, or I'll just toss them. And so that helps keep my house clutter free, which is a real challenge for my ADHD brain. And it means that when it comes time to move, we don't have as much stuff to move. So that's my number one tip.
Ooh.
Other thing I'll say that we were very lucky with, but that we also kind of pushed for and negotiated is that my partner got jobs. So every time we've moved, it's because my partner got a job, and he was able to negotiate a moving stipend. And he's not in like finance or tech. He's not in a big money industry. Let me just put it that way. Um, so but he asked for that as part of his overall compensation, and as part of the like, hey, if you want to hire me, I'm currently based in Austin and you're in North Carolina, like, can you pay for the move? So he got $2,000 each time, and that covered our U-Haul. We had to do nights in hotels because the distance was just too big to do all at once. And so that $2,000 really helped a lot. So if it's for a new job, or even if it's in any way work related, asking if there's a moving stipend, it's just an easy question that could have a huge impact on your moving finances.
What great advice, and like how awesome that like he had the courage to ask that. I mean, obviously, him being your partner, I hope you encouraged him to do that, but a lot of times people don't even think about that, or they just throw the idea out of their mind because, well, if they were going to give me that, they would have offered it, and that's not necessarily true.
No, and I'll say my partner is like a shy little introvert, and he definitely, we did have to do a few practice rounds, but like, hey, do a practice round with your partner, with your friends, whoever it is, and it never hurts to ask, right? Just ask.
Yeah, I am a firm believer in you don't get what you don't ask for, right? And like the worst they say is no, and you're like right back where you started, which is totally fine.
Exactly. No harm, no foul.
So it may have been when you were in North Carolina, but you posted something on TikTok about finding a community of people with like similar interests. How was that for you? I know you're an extrovert, so hopefully it was smooth for you, but like, can you share how listeners can find other frugal focused people, especially if they are in a new community or if they just want to expand their network in their current community?
Yes. Okay. So I definitely am an extrovert, which I know not everyone is, but I want to say at the top, you don't have to be like Miss Outgoing in order to make friends. And making friends and building community is very important to me. So when I first moved to North Carolina, I was very deliberate about where I sought out friendships, because when I moved to Austin, I was 23. I moved with my best friend from college. So I sort of had a built-in buddy, and I just kind of accumulated friends from like coworkers, or like my roommates' coworkers, or people that we just like randomly kind of ran into. And some of those turned into good friendships, but most of them didn't, because we didn't have a shared foundation, or we didn't have shared values. It was just sort of like, you work at this restaurant that I work at. Cool.
Yeah.
That's the end of our things that we have in common. So when I got to North Carolina, I literally sat down and made a list. I made a spreadsheet of things that I was interested in and that I wanted to do more of. And so for me, that was walking, because I work from home and sometimes I'll go 2 or 3 days without really leaving the house, which is bad for my mental health. It's bad for my physical health. And so I said, okay, a walk is a totally free, easy way to get out of the house. I don't need to have a gym membership. Like, I can just go for a walk. And I found in North Carolina a walking club, a women's walking club that met several times a month. So I
Wow.
started going to that, and they would do it at different locations around the city. And so I knew I want to do this, and I have buy-in from other people who want to walk. So like at least we have walking and meeting other people in common, because that's what the group is built around. And then I just did that with a few other things like, oh, I'm interested in sustainability. I'll look for volunteer opportunities at, sustainable nonprofits in the city. I like reading. I'll host these book swaps. Again, totally for free. You just show up at a park with a book, and then we would swap and talk about why we liked the books, right? So I would say if you're looking to build new community in a new place, or if you have been someplace for a long time and you just want to meet new people or try something new, really think about what it is you want from putting in this effort. Do you want a new skill? Do you want to meet new people? Like, what's your goal? Um, and then think about where people are already doing that. Like, it's 2024. We're not reinventing the wheel here.
Right.
People are gathering, people have been gathering in a variety of ways since the beginning of time. So if you want to join like a, a running club, someone has already started that. If
Yeah.
you to take cooking classes, those are out there. So you just have to find the people that are doing the thing that you're interested in and show up repeatedly. That's how you build connection. You might meet someone once and say, that was fun. But if you never see them again, are you really friends? No.
Right.
So
Yeah.
repetition is key.
And would you say it's as simple as just a Google search for the thing that you're interested in and just see what comes up like close by to you? Or is there something else, maybe like a TikTok search? Or how did you find like the walking club?
Okay, this is going to make me sound like such an elder millennial, but it was Facebook.
I'm here for it.
Facebook. I mean, you could definitely do TikTok. I mean, TikTok really operates as a search engine. But I went to Google and I went to Facebook because Facebook groups, man, again, I hate to sound like an elder millennial, but Facebook groups are where it's at.
Yes.
So just typing in, like women sustainability, women walking, and then like your city on Facebook or on Google or on TikTok, yes, use the power of the internet to find the people in real life.
Yes, I am right there with you. Like I don't use TikTok for searching anything, even though I heard it is very good for that. That's not where I'm at. Google and Facebook it is.
Mhm.
Well, that's a great advice. Thank you for sharing that. So, you recently were featured in a Pop Sugar article about underconsumption influencers. Can you talk about overconsumption in our economy and just overall your thoughts on what's happening in our society?
Absolutely. So, something that not a lot of people know is that 70% of the American economy is consumer spending. I think when you say the word like the economy, you're thinking kind of maybe like Wall Street or people in suits and like briefcases, or maybe like the Federal Reserve. You're kind of thinking like very button up, big picture, like fancy economic math, right? But actually, 70% of the economy is just based on everyday people buying everyday things like toilet paper, cars, groceries. Like it's not fancy stuff and it's not fancy math. And that to me says, the average everyday Joe runs the economy. And when you think about how you spend your time, I think this often shocks people, but everything we do pretty much comes with an ad. Like if you want to watch TV, you have to watch ads, listening to the radio, ads, watching YouTube, ads, on Instagram, on TikTok, ads, right? And the only way you can avoid ads is by paying, right? Spotify premium, no ads. YouTube premium, no ads. I'm like, I
Premium.
can't remember what
Yep.
YouTube calls it, but so marketing, money, and everyday people are all tied up in running the economy. And that has led to overconsumption. When you're seeing literally 5,000 ads a day because you spend 2 hours on TikTok and you saw 30, 40 ads just on TikTok. You spent an hour in the car commuting and you heard 200 ads over the course of the hour. It pushes you to buy things, right? That's the whole purpose of advertising. And as we lose our skill set, like just as an example, I'm watching Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman.
My mom
Right.
loved that show.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. Just like 90s. I'm loving it. But it takes place in 1866 in like the Colorado territories. And so there are no stores really. There's like a general store. And the characters are always like, oh, I'll have to order that. We don't have that in stock, And it's like, oh yeah, these people, if they wanted something, they usually had to make it themselves. Like they are growing their own vegetables, they are raising chickens, they are sewing their own clothing. As we've moved away from that, and let me be clear, I don't want to live in 1866. It's too much. But as we like, I don't really know how to sew. I don't really know how to like raise a chicken. I think maybe I could do it. They don't seem like they need a ton of work, but if they got sick, I couldn't like nurse my chicken back to health. Um, what we've done is replace skill sets with selling people things. So, hey, you don't
Mhm.
need to know how to make clothes because you can go to any store on the corner and buy clothes. So, we've moved out of a make it society into a buy it society, and we are now inundated with ads, which just leads to us over consuming. All of us do it. It's really out of control. We are taking too much out of the earth has finite resources and we're taking too much out and not putting enough back in. And I think more people are beginning to realize this, especially as prices for things go up. So people have less extra money, everything is more expensive, and people are like, hold on a second, maybe I should learn how to sew because I can't afford to spend $70 on a dress that's going to rip, after three wears. And so, as to kind of sum up, we see a ton of ads. We don't have the skills to make things for ourselves, and things are getting more expensive. And so that's all leading to overconsumption.
I think I 100% agree with that. And I think some other aspects to it, the ease in which you can get something, right? I mean, I feel like we're in, instant gratification society. You can buy it with one click, you can get it delivered by end of day, like, and this convenience factor costs money, number one, but it's also fueling this desire to consume because we can have it now. And like, it feels
Exactly.
good to have it now. And I think delayed gratification is so underrated. And especially when it comes to budgeting, it's something that we all need to learn and master because it will help us so much more individually, but also as a collective.
100%. Yeah. And we are pushed to buy, with like one click spending, one click shopping, like just get it immediately or 2-day delivery. We are pushed not to think about it and not
Mhm.
to take a second and breathe, but just do it immediately. And that definitely leads to overconsumption.
And then another thing I wanted your opinion on is influencers. I feel like influencer marketing is obviously something that wasn't around, 20 years ago, barely 10 years ago. Do you feel like influencer marketing is contributing to this overconsumption in our economy as well? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
100%. And I hate to sound like I'm attacking influencers because I actually am very fascinated by the influencer economy. And it has been a way for predominantly women to build businesses for themselves and to make money and to become breadwinners, which is something that I'm very in support of. But yeah, like we can't lie, those Amazon must-haves, those Temu basics, those, Shein hauls, those are all absolutely garbage for the environment. Most of the time, people are buying these things. Especially with fast fashion, they're wearing them once or twice and then they throw them out. I mean, the statistics around clothing, how much we buy, how little we wear, and how quickly we throw it out is really shocking. The average American throws out 81 pounds of clothing per year,
Wow.
which is crazy. It's so crazy. But then you think about what you see on social media. It's a lot of these micro trends, or it's a lot of like, oh, I bought this outfit for a specific occasion, like a Taylor Swift concert, right? Or like to go see the Barbie movie. When else am I going to wear a hot pink sparkly dress? Never.
Right.
So I'll just throw it out, right? And so this kind of like buy something and then trash it mindset, I do think really has its roots in social media.
I would agree. And unfortunately, my past self was definitely that. I'll get this outfit to go to this like special event at the museum that,
Mhm.
will never happen again. And it's definitely bad for the budget, but bad and across multiple spectrums. And I think, you had mentioned that ads, like we're constantly like fueled by ads and like that drives this overconsumption. And I think the ads that, we consume, that might not even be fully mindful, right? Like that's just coming in and we're just listening and that's it. But like with influencers, it's almost like intentional, right? Like we see like our favorite influencers and their recommendations, and we want to look like them or be like them or have what they have. And so it's much more intentional to make those purchases when it comes to influencers, even though it's still driving this overconsumption in our economy. So I think it's very important to be mindful about what you're consuming. And then also, too, to be aware that just because you're not focused or paying attention to this ad doesn't mean it's not having an impact on you and your spending decisions.
Oh my gosh, that's exactly it. Like so much. I was just reading about nostalgia marketing, which is where companies prey on, not prey, but like they do, they kind of prey on your emotions about your past. So that's why we see like, oh, you used to watch, Hocus Pocus when you were a kid. Now we're going to do like a Hocus Pocus themed Stanley Cup. And so they get you to spend that $45 on this cup that you're really only going to use in the fall, maybe for one fall. Are you going to use that
Right.
cup every fall, every year for the rest of your life? Honestly, probably not, because we're trained to buy and trash, right? And you don't even realize that it's happening. You're just sort of like, oh, it's so fun that like this company is doing this thing, but they're doing that on purpose to try and get you to spend more money.
Ooh, yes. Oh my gosh. And I think, you know, pulling the thread through on that, like we have to not necessarily control our emotions, but just be mindful of that because, you are purchasing this thing that takes you back 20 years and the happy times that you had back then. But this actual item is not it's just you spending money. It's not you really going back in time and reliving
Exactly.
that.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, yes, 100%.
So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how people can start consuming less and feel good about it. Because a lot of the clients I work with, like they spending money makes them feel better, or spending money is something that they do to feel better, right? And so, how can people start consuming less, but also feel good about consuming less?
Yes, and it's so true. I mean, I love to spend money on things that I know I'll use or that fit a need in my life or that make my life easier. I think we all do that. But I also know, and I'm sure many of your clients experience this, so many of us do experience buyer's remorse. We spent money and then we feel guilty or ashamed about it. And we do that pretty regularly. So, what I always tell people is start with those purchases. So,
Mm.
sit down, go over your budget, go into your credit card, export the data, and see which purchases in the past month or two made you feel bad, right? That
Mm.
didn't bring you joy, that didn't make you happy, and then see if you can spend a week avoiding that kind of spending. It doesn't have to be forever. Start with a small, 3 days, 7 days. We're not trying to drastically change your whole life. We're just trying to reframe some habits or to reframe a mindset at the beginning. And so if you can avoid that painful spending, you are already spending less, right? You're already consuming less. So if you're like, "Oh man, I always get like a candy bar when I check out at CVS when I pick up my prescription every week. Skip the candy bar. Still
Yeah.
get the prescription, get what you need, skip the candy bar, right? And so now, oh, I'm eating less sugar. I feel better. I'm waking up easier. And I'm saving $3 every week. It's not, you're not going to retire early off of that $3. But again, we're changing that mindset and we're changing that habit in a way that feels good.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I love this thought of like actually look at the purchases that made you feel anything that weren't good, right? Because most times people make the purchase to feel better. But when it does the opposite, we need to be aware of that. So we're not putting ourselves in the exact same position of trying to feel better only to feel worse.
Exactly, exactly. And I think too something that her name is Paige Pritchard, and I think her handle is overcoming overspending. I think that's her handle. It's something very similar. And she always talks about if you want to start something, like I want to become a runner. A lot of us will say, I want to start running. I'm going to go buy sneakers. And it's like,
Mm.
actually, if you want to become a runner, you need to start running. Like,
Yes.
you don't
Oh
need
my
to
gosh.
buy anything. Really, I'm willing to bet most people have a pair of shoes they can do a 10-minute run in, right? Or even a walk, starting off with a walk. So instead of rushing to try and change every single way you spend money, picking just one that makes you feel bad and trying to eliminate that, it's an easier start and it helps rewire the brain.
I completely agree. And I feel like it gets easier over time. Like the more you do it, the more you flex that muscle, the easier it becomes.
Yes, 100%.
So let's talk about your new book. What is Green Money all about? I know I said congratulations already, but congratulations again, my friend. I feel like this is something that's been a long time coming, and I'm very happy for you. So I would love to hear all about it and what ultimately encouraged you to write it.
Oh my goodness, such good questions, and thank you. So I've wanted to write a book pretty much my whole life. That was like the first thing I ever wanted to be when I was a kid was president, which now
Yes.
I like I'm like, oh, what a funny thing because being president sounds awful.
Yeah.
But the second thing I wanted to be was a writer. I've always been a big reader. I always wrote short stories and I was on the newspaper and all these kinds of things in high school and college. And so I've always really believed in the power, excuse me, I've always really believed in the power of the written word. And I was approached to write this book, which is, I feel so lucky about, this publisher came to me and said, "Hey, we like your voice. We like your online content. Would you be interested in writing a book?" And I was like, "Yep." Yes, I
Since
would.
forever.
And specifically, I said, I don't want to write another Money 101 book because that book has been written. There are people out there who have incredible stories, who have um, financial degrees, who were able to write the like, here's how you budget, here's how you pay off debt, here's how the stock market works. That book has been written. I don't need to add to it. But specifically, I wanted to talk about this intersection of money and sustainability because I think more and more people are realizing, hey, like climate change is really real and we're living through it. Or, hey, things are getting more expensive. And especially coming through COVID and seeing like toilet paper shortages, right? Of, oh, what if our lives change in a way that's for the worse? Um, because of global events. Like, will I be ready? Will I be able to do this? Will my money be ready? And so that's really what the book is about. It's about reshaping our relationship to the world around us and using money as a tool for change in our personal lives and in the way the world operates. So the book opens with a little bit of history of, how we got here and how our economy works and how money in our world works. And then it goes into how you can make changes to your personal spending to be more sustainable, how you can invest sustainably, how you can bank green, and how you can build community, calling back to your earlier question of how can you find other people who are interested in resource sharing, who are interested in maybe living together, who are interested in helping each other grow financially. And so the book it's all those things and more.
Oh my gosh. I love the focus on sustainability, and I feel like sometimes that just gets lost in translation just with the nature of our society and social media and consumption. So I want to spend a little bit more time there. Can you break down what sustainable money, sustainable living, what those things mean, and why it's so important for a person to actually consider a sustainable lifestyle?
Absolutely. So the world of sustainable money, I will admit, is a little bit nebulous because we don't have like federal definitions of what sustainable investing is or what a sustainable company is. Really, that's up to each company to decide, if we're going to use sustainable packaging, if we're going to use only clean energy to produce our products. Really, that all boils down to a company by company basis. So then when you look at it, kind of you zoom out, and as an investor, you're thinking, well, I want to buy stocks in these companies, but like, I don't really know how sustainable they are. I don't know if they align with my values. It can get a little thorny. And so that's another reason I wanted to write this book is to try and make it a little easier to understand all of this. Um, But when it comes to sustainable spending, sustainable living, and sustainable money, the great news is simplification is key. The simpler things are, the more sustainable you're going to be. So, for example, like having a no spend day, really simple for
Mhm.
most of us, right? And means you saved money. You didn't have to put anything out that you didn't need. You were consuming less, you were using less energy, right? So it's a sustainable decision. So when we look at why is sustainability important and why is sustainability in money important? Sustainability is important because this is our only planet, right? Like,
Yes.
ain't nowhere else for us to go. So, if we poison all the water, right, with like forever chemicals and we can't drink water anymore, humans aren't going to make it. If we poison all the air with pollution and we can't breathe air anymore, humans aren't going to make it. So, and these are all things that have happened, that are happening, right? But we live in this complex world that runs on money. So to me, changing our personal approach as well as our big picture, government approach to how we do money is a fantastic way to create those sustainable changes. And so it's things like, oh, well, in my house, we eat everything, but we're going to do meatless Mondays because meat is, raising animals, raising cows, pigs. It takes a huge toll on the environment. It's environmentally eating meat, it really is a disaster. But like I have Crohn's disease. I can't be a full vegetarian because I can't eat beans because my insides will die. So
Oh,
like not everyone can go full vegan. Okay, well, doing 1 or 2 days a week where you don't eat meat saves you money because meat's more expensive, and it's a greener choice for the planet, right? So perfect. And then, hey, guess what? If the government, if you vote in candidates who care about clean air, clean water, right, and they legislate laws, then that's going to trickle down as well. So that's kind of, I'm getting a little long-winded here, but sustainability is so important because we want to continue to be here on earth and to do amazing things that humans do. And the more we can make our money sustainable, the more we can make our systems sustainable.
I love that you gave examples of like sustainability on an individual level. So, someone who's thinking, well, my change isn't going to make an impact. Well, it actually can make an impact. But you also gave an example of sustainability on a bigger scale, right? So, voting and using our rights as, American citizens to nominate or elect people in positions who can implement change that happens across the board, right? So, I really appreciate that, Kara, because I think sometimes people can, like I said, think, well, me, if I'm the only one changing, like nothing's going to change. So,
Mhm.
like, why am I going to change? And that's not really a great outlook to have because one person changing can be the result of a lot of people changing.
Absolutely. And you think about every single societal shift that has ever happened, it's because one person said, I don't like this, and then got other people involved, right? Like everything from civil rights to women's rights to the history of, sustainable activism today. Like we have Earth Day today because in the late 60s and early 70s, a bunch of sustainability nerds and environmental activists said it's so important that we bring attention to the pollution, to the way pollution is impacting our planet. And now we have Earth Day activities and we have Earth Day as like a recognized day for people to tune into. Oh my goodness, yeah, let me like pick up some litter. Let me plant a tree. Let me be in contact with nature. And that's because of work that people put in 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great example. Like just because you feel like your single change is, not relevant, it actually is. And we have evidence to support that, right? It starts with one.
Yes.
So you gave some examples of how people can become more sustainable. So like no spend days or like meatless Mondays, things like that. Um, do you have any tips you can share about people who want to spend their money wisely? So maybe investing in sustainable companies. I know you said like everyone is or every company is a little different, things like that, but I would love to hear your tips on how, everyday people can find ways to use their dollars to support a more sustainable lifestyle, whether that's investing or spending differently, maybe investing in small businesses or, spending with small businesses. Any tips you can share there?
Totally. So a statistic, and someone, a listener can fact check me on this, but I think the statistic is every time you shop locally, 68 cents for every dollar you spend stays in your community. And every time you shop at a national chain, only 20 cents stays in your community. And so that's a
Wow.
huge difference, right? So the first step that I always like to tell people is see if you can find a local replacement. So when I moved to North Carolina, I joined this nonprofit that helped plant trees around the city. And I was like, oh, perfect. Like sustainability, this is great. And they said, oh, you need to provide your own garden gloves, like come help us plant trees, but bring your own garden gloves. And so at first I was like, oh, I'll just stop by Target like on my way out there. And then I said, wait a second. I'm sure there's a local garden store. Like I'm sure there's some place in the city of Charlotte that some mom and pop store is selling garden gloves. And there were many. And so I stopped at one of those and picked up garden gloves. They cost exactly the same. And I was able to keep my dollars in the Charlotte community to a one-on-one owner, right? Instead of like Mr. Target, right? I don't even, who's the CEO of Target? I don't know.
Right.
Um, so I always say people like try and find something like that. Now, there are certain things that you're not going to be able to get like locally mined gas for your car. Like, okay, fair enough.
Right.
But for other things, right? And like a big one is eating. So is there a farmer's market you can go to once a month instead of always going to Aldi or Walmart or wherever it is? And so that way you're keeping dollars local. So connecting what your financial needs are, what your purchasing needs are to your local community is always going to be more sustainable. It's going to benefit you more in the long run. It's going to benefit your community. And I would say that's really the place to start thinking bigger picture if you want to talk about investing or you want to talk about like retirement planning, kind of like big picture money things. I also tell people financial community is so important, right? Like, yes, you're going to have your accounts in your own name, but having people that you can talk to about money or that you might want to do, I think a lot of us, especially millennials, we joke about like, oh, I just want to get like six of my best friends on a commune in the woods. Like, hey, what if that actually happened? Or something that I plan on doing is buying a house and then building an ADU, an accessory or additional dwelling unit. Um, and so that way, like maybe my mother can live there when she's a little bit older, right? Or I can rent that out to someone in my community for a discounted price. But seeing what connects me to other people, like what parts of my money connect me to other people, and leaning into that, I think is also always going to be a really sustainable decision.
Yeah. And, what you shared, like maybe requires some like reflection and some initial research on the front end, right? But amazing things can come as a result of that.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what's that saying, right? Like anything worth doing is worth doing well. And it's like,
Yes.
when it comes to like our money, yes, there's a learning curve any which way, right? Like even if you don't want to look at it from the sustainability angle, you still need to learn how the stock market works. You still need to learn how to pay off debt. There's always going to be that learning curve. So why not align that learning curve with your values?
Yes. Oh my gosh. And that kind of leads me into this next question I'm curious to hear your thoughts on are what do you think about like goal setting and sustainable living, right? Because I feel like someone could maybe think that they can't do both or they can't, accumulate wealth, but also, be sustainable. And that's clearly not true. But what are
Mhm.
your thoughts on that and how someone could potentially bridge that knowledge gap so they feel comfortable going after the things they want, but also doing it in a sustainable way.
I always tell people it's a journey. Like, you don't have to wake up tomorrow and be the most sustainable person in the world. I'm not. I have been at this for years, and I am definitely not the most sustainable person in the world. I tell people to break it down by categories and start with the ones that make the most sense. Like, you and I don't have kids, so I don't have to spend, okay. So I just recently spent time with two of my friends. We were staying together at a wedding, and they have a son who's not quite two, and he's
Ooh.
experiencing a sleep regression, which means that he wakes up every night at like 4 a.m., freaking out. I mean, like in tears, sobbing. So my friends, like seriously, champions, are not getting their full 8 hours of sleep. They're sleeping like 4 or 5 hours every night. They're changing diapers, they're doing the baby thing. I'm not doing that. Okay, so that means that we have different amounts of free time. So would I expect those friends of mine to meet me on every single sustainable decision that I'm making for my life? No, absolutely
No.
not. So pick an area that you think you can be more sustainable in. For a lot of people, I recommend starting in one of the three big budget areas: food, transportation, housing. Pick one, start making moves in that category.
Mm.
Don't worry about the other things. So you often see people say, okay, you know what? I'm going to give up fast fashion, right? Like I'm not going to order from Amazon, Temu, Forever 21, Shein. I'll give up fast fashion. Perfect. There's a lot of alternatives to that, right? You can start thrifting. There's Poshmark, there's ThredUp. You can buy ethical fashion. Meanwhile, you're still going to be eating meat. You're still using your gas powered car. That's okay. We're not at those areas yet. We're just focusing on your clothing, right? Or we're just going to focus on food. So pick one area that makes sense for you to focus on right now. Make some changes in that area. Once you're confident there, then you can move on to other things.
I think that's an important theme of this episode, right? Like
Yeah.
it's okay to start small, right? In fact, that's probably where you're going to see the biggest change because if you try to do everything all at once, that usually doesn't work out the way we intend it to.
No, imagine if you went to the gym and you were like, I'm going to do 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 jumping jacks. I'm going to lift 100-pound weights. Like if you tried to do every single exercise in one day at the gym, you'd have a heart attack. Like that's not going to work. You
Right.
go and you're like, today I'm going to do arms. And then on Thursday, I'll do legs. And that's exactly the approach to take towards making your life and your money more sustainable.
I completely agree. And I feel like that is realistic for all of us. We can all find one thing that we can do a little bit differently to start this journey for ourselves.
Exactly.
So, I would love to hear some of your favorite low or no cost activities. And I'm asking this question specifically because a common misconception that, people who come into my community have is that if they are mindful with money, if they are on a budget, it means they can't enjoy life. They
Mhm.
almost associate enjoying life with spending money. And that is definitely not the case. So, I would love to hear from you some of your favorite low or no cost activities so people can get their mental wheels turning.
Oh my gosh, yes. I always say money is creative, budgeting is creative, and I think sustainability is creative too. And so, some of my favorite low cost things, obviously, I love going for walks. Walks are great. And especially if you're in or near a park, right? That's a really good way to spend a little bit time in nature for $0. Other things I love, game nights, right? You buy one board game once, you can use it a million times. Movie nights, um, I like to do errands with friends. And so this might cost a little bit more money depending on what your errands are. But, asking someone, hey, do you want to come with me to the grocery store? Do you want to come with me to the post office? So all those things that you have to do that maybe you don't love, but you add in a friend makes it more enjoyable and you're getting checking things off the to-do list. I also really encourage people to look around their towns or cities to see if there are any free to attend events. So I recently went to a event in my town. It was just a festival. They had different performers. We saw a spoken word poet. We saw a local person sing. They had food trucks. They had performers. And it was just free to the public. It was great. Things like that can be really, really fun and totally new experiences. I also will say, I feel like I don't know, maybe I wasn't aware of this earlier in my life, but I also feel like I'm seeing a lot of heritage festivals. Like I went recently to a Greek festival and an
Ooh.
Italian festival. So it's like, the Italian Americans in your cities are like putting on a festival. And it's so fun because you inevitably learn something you didn't know about this culture. There's incredible food, and you get to see like, okay, at the Greek festival, there was this group of like, I don't know, 70 to 80-year-old ladies who were killing it on the dance floor doing,
Wow.
traditional Greek dancing. And I was like, when would I ever see this? And it's for free. This is incredible.
How cool. That's such a great piece of advice. I actually haven't been to a heritage festival, but hello, like that's so cool. Like, I love
It's been
Italian
so
food.
fun.
Imagine
Exactly. And it's
like,
like, who's turning down pasta? Nobody is.
right, exactly. Hello. That's great advice.
Yeah. So like definitely do a Google, Italian Festival Cincinnati or wherever you guys are because so worth it.
Yeah, I love that, and I also loved like just an overall search in your city or even like a neighboring city, right? To kind of change your environment a little
Yeah,
bit, but still like switch up your element, not spend a lot of money, and if you do spend it, it probably is supporting the local community.
100%.
So, any final words of wisdom for someone who does want to kick their overconsumption habit and just live a more sustainable lifestyle?
I would say it's really never too late and it's never too little. I think so often we think if I haven't done that by the time I'm 25, if I haven't done that by the time I'm 30, it's not worth doing. And that's so wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
You've got a lot of life left to live, right? And so if you decide at 47 that you want to stop buying fast fashion and you don't buy fast fashion for the next 10 years, what a huge sustainable win, right? Huge.
Yes.
And so if you're nervous or if you feel like, I don't know if this is for me, just give it a try. Just give it a try. Find a part of it that works for you, that makes you feel joy, and always understand that you can pivot.
Yes, like start small and see
Mhm.
what happens as a result.
Exactly.
So, how can listeners get a copy of Green Money?
It is available on all the major booksellers. So it's at bookshop.org, it's on Barnes& and Noble, it's on Amazon, it's at Target. So you can order it online and then it will be out in stores November 27th. So you should be able to go to a Barnes& and Noble or something in person and find it November 27th.
So exciting. Is there a particular place you would want me to send people? I'll link to it in the show notes. Like, is there a particular bookstore or option you would want listeners to purchase Green Money with?
Yeah, it's
I knew
so
it.
sad, but it's Amazon. My
Okay.
publisher was like, "Girl, you got to send people to this Amazon page," and I was like,
Amazon.
"Okay."
Okay, we will definitely link to that in the show notes so everyone listening can grab their copy. And then if listeners want to just connect with you in general, where's the best place they can do that?
Definitely, you can find me on any social media platform. I spend way too much time on social media, but we are at We Bravely Go on Instagram and TikTok. We're on Threads, we're on Twitter, we're everywhere.
Awesome. I will link to We Bravely Go in the show notes. Kara, thank you so much for being here and sharing your words of wisdom with us today. Greatly appreciate it. So good to see you, friend.
Oh my goodness, thank you for having me. You are just like a shining light. I'm so glad we got the chance to catch up.
Likewise.